This offense has devastated Isaac Schuman's parents and stepfather. No parent should have to endure the loss of a child. They have had to cope with the senseless death of a loved one while enduring the weight of the criminal justice system that can be slow, confusing, and sometimes frustrating to victims. To you and to your family, there are probably no words that I can say today that will alleviate your grief. But I would be remiss for not expressing my sincere condolences to all of you. I am sorry for your loss and what you've had to endure. Although it must have been difficult, I appreciate each of you speaking today and sharing a glimpse into Isaac's life and who he was. It sounds like he was a wonderful person, a bright young man who had an unlimited future. And for that, we in this community have lost. A.J. Martin and Riley Madison would have died on that riverbank had it not been for the swift action of law enforcement and EMTs and other tubers who helped to treat their wounds and stabilize their condition. They had long hospital stays, but they were very fortunate to receive high-quality medical treatment that restored their health. But we heard from them about the toll this matter has taken on their health, their mental psyche, and their prospects for the future. Anthony Carlson and Dante Carlson's wounds were less severe, but the risk to life was still present, obviously because the knife was directed into their torso near vital organs. But they fortunately have survived. Each of these surviving stabbing victims suffered permanent physical disfigurement, and that can't be overlooked. And we've heard from A.J. Martin just about how that disfigurement can affect one's life. In assessing Mr. Miu's character, I must consider his conduct on July 30. Mr. Miu's crimes were the product of circumstance, not intent. Mr. Miu was not looking to cause trouble or hurt anyone, but he made a series of very poor decisions. When confronted with words and boorish taunts and insults, Mr. Miu drew a knife and he struck Madison Cohen. That quickly culminated in senseless, lethal violence. He left the scene, leaving his victims to die, while casually floating past them and emergency workers as if nothing had happened. He nearly reached his car. He nearly escaped the jurisdiction before law enforcement arrested him. These are terrible acts that form an indelible stain on his character. There is more to Mr. Miu than his worst acts. I can tell Mr. Miu has taken this case very seriously. He has been appropriate and respectful in his demeanor in court. I sense that he carries a heavy burden, too. I imagine he is disheartened at the prospect of prison and the uncertainty of his future. But I also sense that Mr. Miu feels genuine sadness and remorse for what happened to his victims. I agree with the comments earlier that our criminal justice system is not designed in a way to allow people to apologize or to alleviate grief or to show respect to victims until a day like today at sentencing. That is unfortunate, but I heard Mr. Miu's words, both today and before, and I think he is sorry. Other than his conduct on July 30, Mr. Miu appears to be a quiet, nonviolent, peaceful man. He's never been in trouble before. He is loved by his family and friends. He's generous with his time. He helps others who are less fortunate or who are in need. Mr. Miu is respected in his community. Several of his personal friends and co-workers submitted letters that describe his character. Those letters were not shared in court today, but some of the most common words they use to describe Mr. Miu are kind, compassionate, friendly, loyal, respectful, and honest. Mr. Miu had to overcome great obstacles in life to achieve his place. He and his family suffered at the brutal hands of the communist regime in Romania. When he was a teenager, he and his family fled. They found asylum in the United States. Here he adjusted to a new country, new language, new culture. He got good grades in high school. He went on to college in South Dakota. He became an engineer. He worked hard. He had a successful career. I read somewhere in my materials that the proudest moment in Mr. Miu's life was becoming an American citizen. Mr. Miu has no rehabilitative needs. That means he doesn't need rehabilitation. He has no past criminal history. He does not associate with criminals. He has never used illegal drugs. He is not an alcoholic. He has not been diagnosed with a mental health condition, although there is evidence that he's experienced PTSD from July 30 while in the jail. Mr. Miu is educated. He has vocational skills. He has life skills. He's financially secure. He has a stable home. He has positive social supports. He knows the difference between right and wrong. He doesn't need rehabilitation. I mention all of these things to acknowledge that there is a lot more to Mr. Miu than what he did on July 30. I mention these things to recognize that a fair and just sentence takes into account the complete person, not just his worst acts at his lowest moment. Despite the seriousness of Mr. Miu's crimes, the evidence does not show that he poses an imminent risk to the public. Mr. Miu underwent a COMPASS assessment, which is an actuarial tool that measures a person's risk of committing future crimes. Not surprisingly, Mr. Miu scored low risk. He's not a career criminal. He's not a violent predator. Although Mr. Miu may not pose an imminent risk to the public does have a strong interest in holding people accountable who breach the social compact and commit crimes. It's the concept of punishment. Punishment is a sentencing objective. When a person commits a serious crime, that person forfeits rights enjoyed by the law-abiding community. The most restrictive punishments are reserved for those who commit the most serious crimes. The punishment exacts a toll on the offender because of the harm the offender caused to the victim and the community. Taking life and endangering the lives of others are two crimes that warrant significant punishment. Punishment for what Mr. Miu did, but also punishment that recognizes who he is and the circumstances of his crimes. Here, that punishment will involve the loss of liberty, because anything else would depreciate the seriousness of his crimes. So at this time, I will impose the following sentence on Mr. Miu. For count 1, I will impose a term of initial confinement of 20 years, followed by 6 years of extended supervision. For count 2, involving Anthony Carlson, 5 years initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 3, involving Dante Carlson, 5 years of initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 4, Alexander Martin, 6 years of initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 5, Riley Madison, 5 years initial confinement, followed by 5 years of extended supervision. Count 6, Madison Cohen, 270 days of jail. Mr. Miu is not eligible for challenge incarceration program or the earned release program due to his age and the nature of these offenses. The sentences on all 6 counts will run concurrent. I am imposing a concurrent sentence because Mr. Miu's conduct toward each of his victims was part of a single continuous act over a short period of time. The periods of confinement take into consideration Mr. Miu's entire behavior, not just the behavior directed at any one particular individual. The conditions of extended supervision will include the following: maintain absolute sobriety, no possession of drugs or alcohol. You shall not enter any establishment where the primary purpose is the sale of alcohol. This will include places like bars, taverns, liquor stores, beer tents, and the like. You must complete an AODA assessment. You must comply with all recommendations of the Compass Assessment and the Department of Corrections. He must pay court costs and DNA surcharge on each count. He must submit a DNA sample. He may not have any contact with Isaac Schumann's family, including Elena and Danya Hernandez and Scott Schumann. He may not have contact with Alexander Martin, Riley Madison, Anthony Carlson, Dante Carlson, or Madison Cohen. He is responsible for restitution. The state must submit its restitution demand within 30 days. The defense may have 30 days thereafter to object. If there is an objection, the matter will be scheduled for a restitution hearing. Because Mr. Miu is convicted of serious felonies, he may not possess firearms. He may not possess body armor. He may not vote or hold public office until his civil rights are restored. If he were to do any of those things contrary to law, he would subject himself to additional criminal penalties. If he violates the no-contact orders, he may also subject himself to additional criminal penalties. Does the state agree on the credit calculation, 732 days?
Yes.
All right, 732 days credit. Mr. Miu is remanded to the custody of the sheriff for delivery to the Dodge Reception Center. Is there anything else for today, Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Nelson?
No, Judge.
All right. Thank you all. We stand adjourned.